my name is Monique.
And I'm Naveen from Before We Play.
And today we have a special video for you.
We do.
In honor of people starting to gather again to join game groups, we thought this would be a perfect time to kind of discuss a few teaching tips on how to teach board games.
Yes, it's probably been a little over a year maybe since you got together with your gaming group. And how do you teach a board game without getting frustrated?
And so today we are joined by a couple of special guests. These are two people who are our favorite, all-time favorite board game instructors, and honestly, people who we really look up to in the industry. And they are none other than John of John Gets Games, as well as Rodney Smith of Watch It Played.
And so, John, take it away.
Hey there, my name is Jonathan Cox, and I run the YouTube channel John Gets Games. Today, I want to talk about an aspect to learning and teaching games that I think is oftentimes overlooked, and that involves the actual setup of the game on the table. Now, I'm going to start with the learning aspect, because obviously you have to know the game in order to teach it to other people. Now, whenever I sit down to play a game, the first thing I do is I obviously take the manual out, and then I take all of the components out. I take them all out of the wrappers, put them into little piles, and then I work through the setup instructions in the rulebook before I go anywhere else. Now, I think this is really important as a rules teacher because it is going to give you some muscle memory as far as where different components go. It will also help teach you the names of these components, which might seem silly, but I really do think that component names are important, especially in medium to heavyweight games and Euros, where a specific name of a component is talked about on various cards in the game, and it's just really good to know that those aren't just like people cards, they're leader cards or something like that. Now, I have definitely found that when I do that full setup before I read the rest of the rules, I understand the game much better. And when I'm actually reading through the rest of the rules, I actually physically touch the pieces as I reach those different sections and look to the board and say, okay, we're talking about this area, we're talking about that area. And you can really only do that if you set the game up beforehand. Now, let's move on to the actual teaching of the game. And I think the biggest factor in teaching a game well is confidence, or at least not having a lack of confidence. And in the past, whenever I have not confidently set a game up, I found that that has led me to a very rough overall teach. Many games that I like to play have extensive setups with 20 to 30 different steps to them. And I have found that when I familiarize myself with the setup steps beforehand, especially like the night before I play it with somebody else, or even an hour before I sit down to play it with other people, I'm able to launch into that teach way better because you start off just putting everything around. There have been many circumstances in the past where I have not been confident with the setup, where I've been, tripping over different things and like, oh wait, that needs to go over here, and oh no, you can't deal those cards out yet. We have to pull different things out, and how many cards do we have to pull out? Give me a second, and you're digging through the rules. And I found that in those moments, that really puts me on the back foot. And then once the game is set up in that situation, I stay on the back foot for the entire teach. So I think setting the game up well, getting your friends around the table to help you set the game up, being more of a setup manager instead of setting the game up yourself is also an important part of it. If you are familiar with the setup, then you can get into the teach faster because you are asking this person to shuffle these cards up and put 3 equal size stacks over there, and that person over there can split all of these components and put them into bowls, instead of you doing all of that stuff, furiously looking at the rulebook while your opponents are talking amongst themselves and looking at their phones. Now, obviously, your friends talking to each other is a good thing, but I feel like it's good to get everybody invested in the gaming experience as quickly as possible. And the rules teach can essentially start in the setup as well, if you are confident and you know the various components. When you ask that person to split those cards up, you're not just saying the cards, you're saying those are the legend cards or something like that. And those components over there, those are the money, and they're the wood, and they're, maybe they're the prestige tokens. And you're saying these words and you're pointing to the tokens, and your friends are touching these tokens and setting them up. And so they are now essentially getting a similar experience to what you got when you sat down to learn the game earlier and you went through each of those steps in the setup. So yeah, it might seem a little bit silly to focus on the setup when, the majority of the game's rules comes into play with the actual mechanisms. But I really feel like you have to build the house before you can enter it. And the setting up of a game is effectively like building a house with these components. And you don't want to start your teach in this metaphor with a leaky roof or maybe missing a few rooms. So yeah, paying close attention to that setup, feeling very comfortable with it, just like you feel comfortable with the rest of the rules, is just as important. And I know in the past I have overlooked that, and I really try to focus on that these days. And I think that that could definitely help other people out with them going into rules teaches with more confidence and just getting the setup done quicker, which means everybody can be starting the game faster, which is always a good thing.
I love learning new games. I love teaching games. So I'm excited to share a couple of tips that have served me well, and I hope that can help you too. Now, John picked a great one, focusing on the importance of preparing. But let's say you listen to John and you're well prepared. What else can help a teach go smoothly? My first suggestion, be engaging. A rules teach is not always fun to listen to. Oftentimes people want the teach over so they can get to playing the game. But you can't play a game if you don't know the rules. And people tend to have more patience for a teach if you're visibly excited about the game you're going to play. Rules are, in and of themselves, pretty boring. But if you appear engaged by what you're talking about, it makes it easier for others to stay attentive. Don't be afraid to raise the volume of your voice slightly. Be expressive. Smile. Use changes in intonation. Call out people by name. People love hearing their name. Sally, can you pass me that deck of cards? We're going to talk about that next. Or, Fred, can you hold that piece for everyone to see? This is a key component in the game. And don't be afraid to stand up. It can really help draw attention to what you're saying. Unless you're in a video, then just stay seated. The point is, a dry, slow, monotone teach, although it might be totally accurate, won't hold people's attention, and important rules can then get missed. So keep their attention. Here's my other tip. Be patient. Be super patient. Yes, you might have answered a particular question multiple times, but losing your cool or being dismissive, it won't make the session go better. People can feel tension at a table. If someone's just not getting the game, it may not be for them, and that's okay. They likely won't ask to play it the next time around, but for now, your job is to be a good person and help them through this session. And look, this isn't always easy, but remember, as the teacher, you're not really there for you, you're meant to be there for them. And if a player really can't get the hang of it, but they're still very interested in learning the game, just confess the limitations of your teaching powers and let them know they might have more success with a different method. Maybe direct them to a rules video, or let them borrow your rule books to read for themselves before the next session. Okay, so I was asked for just 1 or 2 tips, but this is one of my favorite topics, so I'm going to sneak in one more. I've noticed that many people get anxious in their first game because they're afraid of playing poorly and then people judging them for it. And so while they're learning, they're already starting to think, what's my first turn going to be? How am I going to win this game? Try to deflate that anxiety by reminding people that you often need to see a game all the way through to really understand how to play well. Encourage them not to worry about winning right away or even worrying about making good turns. Tell them, look, we can all get really cutthroat in the next session. I like to start a lot of my game sessions with my favorite phrase, the first game doesn't count. Sometimes just saying that out loud gives people an allowance to relax. They can stop thinking about what their first turn's going to be or how to use the cards they're holding in their hand, and they can just focus on, okay, how does this game work again? Well, look, I hope something in here was helpful. Good luck, fellow rules teachers. You're doing important work.
Thanks, guys. What fantastic tips.
Yes, Rodney, I definitely have to work on the monotone teaching. I definitely do that, and I need to find a way not to do that. It is just my nature, but I'm going to try to work on that as much as I can.
And of course, John with the setup. I could
Yes.
not agree more.
Very, very good tips. For me, I am not the designated teacher. Monique is clearly the designated teacher, but sometimes I do find myself in that situation.
Yeah.
And a tip that I would recommend is do not assume knowledge or information that your audience may or may not know. Let's say a game is a worker placement game, and you just start saying, okay, this is a worker placement game. We're going to be doing some drafting. We're going to be doing X, Y, and Z. That assumes a lot of knowledge on your audience that they know exactly what you're talking about. Now, this might be very quick lingo for an experienced gamer or somebody that you definitely know their kind of pedigree of what games they've played. Mm-hmm. But for some people that you don't know, or maybe newer gamers, that can kind of be a little bit of a difficult thing for them. They don't even know how to ask a question as to like, wait, what exactly are you talking about? And so it can kind of set some people back. So my big tip is do not assume knowledge, define things at first, and then kind of move from there. Mm-hmm. That's my tip.
And for me, this is something that I kind of like to practice all the time when I personally teach games. And it's just something that really helps me. I recommend going from general to specific.
Yeah.
You know, when I go into a game learning experience and somebody else is trying to teach me the game, I'm a pretty terrible student. I have a hard time learning games audibly.
Yes.
And so if somebody kind of just dives into the mechanics right off the bat, I get very lost very quickly. So for me, going from theme to what are you doing in the game to how many rounds, if there are rounds, and turn structure, just kind of that funnel,
Yeah.
kind of like writing an essay, right?
Yep.
You always want to go from general to specific.
Sure, absolutely.
And that kind of also goes in line with with exactly what you said.
Yeah.
We're not assuming knowledge or
Yes.
assuming an understanding of other people's knowledge, and always kind of defining terms, right?
Yes, I've
General to
definitely.
specific.
Yeah, we've definitely been in game groups where sometimes somebody's so excited about a mechanism they want to talk about that mechanism first, but we don't have any of that surrounding kind of information as to what exactly that is, and that gets our brain thinking like we're trying to figure it out,
Yes.
and then we kind of find ourselves behind the eight ball kind of thing.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
And so this is actually the strategy that I employ when even teaching really heavy, really, really big involved like Lacerda strategy games. And of course, this is not always the case,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
You may have reasons why you want to jump into a certain mechanism first, especially if that mechanism is particularly confusing or very specific to that game. Just in general, this is what we love to start with.
Yep.
So those are our cumulative teaching tips. Thank you so much to John of John Gets Games, as well as Rodney from Watch It Played, for your wonderful contributions. You know, we really, really look up to the both of them, and we're so honored that they agreed to be a part of this video. But we sincerely hope this video has been helpful and maybe help try to ease some of the anxiety of going into a game night. We know that this is a lot of information to take in,
Yeah.
so you can, feel free to kind of pick and choose or return to the video at any point in your teaching experience.
Yep. And of course, if you have any tips that you want to share, please leave them down in the comments below so we can kind of have a running list. People can check it out. Maybe they can use those as well.
Yes, this is a community after all where we are learning together.
Yep.
So thank you all so much for watching. And if you enjoy content like this and would like to see more, please consider subscribing.
Thanks.
Bye.